Dan, what's up, man? Let's pull up the chat here. Schubert with a 516 Oppo Taco. What is the new era of college offense? Kyle keeps talking about. Yeah. Yeah, you know what's funny? The best thing I saw, some guy that's like, I don't know if he's like a independent, like college baseball guy or like a scout or something. I can't remember. But he goes, Schubert has true 70 power. That's 70 grade power. And I just wanted to be like, opposite field gap, 517 feet is 70 power? What's 80 power look like? Because that's 80 power, right? And again, it's just like there's so many guys now that have no connection to the game, didn't play at a high level, haven't had like actual scouts train them, and they kind of just like go off what they see on social media. And so to say that, like, again, there's a difference between raw power and like game power. So if you want to say Schubert's got like, you know, if you think he projects as like 70 power, that's great. That's a big number. But like raw power, it doesn't get any more than that. Like at 517 feet, whether maybe it was wind dated, maybe it really wasn't, you know, as far as like a lot of times you see these projections and you saw the homer and then you see where it would have traveled this amount of feet. And you're like, I mean, that was a bomb out of the stadium, left center, whether it was 517 or not. But I saw the guy go, yeah, it's 70 power. And I just want to be like, what does 80 power look like? What does 80 power look like if that's 70, you know? What's up, Buck? I fell asleep last night. How about them Roadrunners beating the mighty Longhorns? Yeah, I saw. I mean, they went 12 innings, I think. So, I mean, yeah, a lot of upsets yesterday. A lot of upsets. And I do, we talked about it yesterday, but I do think you are starting to see a little bit of like the parity between the mid-majors and the Power Fours. Obviously, like the Sun Belt is kind of the Power Fifth conference. Like I would consider the Power Five, the Sun Belt, like a Power Five conference, right? If you want to do that, even though it's a mid-major conference. But like, again, it's like baseball's a lot more like basketball. You see all these really good schools in basketball that are all like mid-majors, but they're not like they play and recruit more like a Power Four, right? NCAA record hit by pitches yesterday. UMBC versus Coppin State. What was the number, Kevin? I don't even know if I want to know. Maybe I shouldn't ask. $12? Is it by one team? Is that the record by one team, or is that combined to both teams? So I feel like that's a single team record, I'm guessing. This is an interesting tweet I just saw, and it just goes to show just how different pitching is utilized and how much different it is now in this in the game now. So Padres' Dylan Cease leads all pitchers with 891 strikeouts over the last 4 seasons. His numbers are this: so 716 innings pitched, 574 hits given up, 891 strikeouts. You know, all this stuff. Nolan Ryan, between the ages of 42 and 45 years old, his numbers: 3.3 ERA, 100 less games started, 14 less games started, So that's a bunch of innings, right? 14 games. If you're just going 5 innings a start, that's what, 70 more innings? So in 14 games less started, he has almost 60 more innings pitched, similar strikeouts, less hits given up, and more innings pitched. Right, better numbers across the board here. I mean, it's crazy to think like this dude was 42, 45, and he would have led the major leagues in strikeouts right now. And actually, it's funny. Jeff Fry, who I may try to get him on the show just to see, because I like some of the stuff he says I agree with, some of it I don't. Like, I think he goes a little hard on some, like, especially like young kids, which like I can understand, because if you feel like the game is going in a drastically bad direction, like maybe you feel like you have to be a little over the top. But he's like, Nolan Ryan would have 1,000 to 2,000 more strikeouts in his career pitching against today's hitters, which, you know, I'd like to see. I mean, it's a decent argument. And again, what pains me is the problem is what you've seen, like almost the Major League Baseball fans have kind of been indoctrinated into this. Like anyone I have a conversation with about like the regression of hitting in the major leagues and in the minor leagues will basically tell me that pitchers are just like there was a great tweet by Caleb Lang yesterday, who's at William and Mary, and he's talking about, he basically posted like when fastballs are 93 or higher, like 91 to 92, the OPS is like 900 for his team. 93 or higher, it's like 570. So if you throw a fastball 93 or higher, the average OPS for them against their arms is 570. And I actually tweeted at him and I was like, these numbers are great. Like, why are we seeing so many guys at the Power 4 level who throw like 96, throwing like 75% off speed? And I think he kind of said, like, I get it. He's like, you know, if the off speed's good, like it's like it could be that the numbers are even worse against the off speed. And I do, again, I don't like it's great to see numbers like that, but again, it's all about context, right? Because if you threw nothing but fastballs, that OPS number would go way up if all you threw was fastballs. But the same is true with off speed. Like if all you throw is off speed, or you throw a very high percentage off speed, like the OPS is going to go up on that pitch as well. And so it just gets back to like, can the guy actually pitch? Yes, UMBC was hit 12 times. Okay, that's it. You know what's crazy is I kind of thought it would be higher than that. And again, like the thing that bothers me about just like the conversations that happen around hitting nowadays is like basically a guy who never played even high school baseball will tell you like, no, hitting's just way harder now. Like it's impossible for those guys. And I'm like, dude, how do you know? You ever stepped in the box? Like you ever stepped in the box against a guy throwing 98? Or are you just making that up because you're looking at numbers? And my point is that what we've created, guys, we haven't put any constraints on players to say like, hey, striking out doesn't matter. Striking out matters. We don't want guys striking out. What do you think about Maryland? I think they're off to a little bit of a slow start, but again, like Northeast schools in general, that's more the norm. So I'm interested to see how they do once we get like deep into conference play. Welcome to midweek low mid-major baseball, yeah, for sure. Kent State over Pitt today, fighting Zeke Pinkhams. At least it was all off-speed pitches, right, Kyle? Yeah, probably. I see so many guys ducking out of the way of off speed, and it's like, man, what are your favorite matchups Friday? I think what LSU Texas is obviously going to be a massive one because we finally get to see LSU against like a real team. So that'll be because again, like when I was looking through the numbers, I was doing it this morning. LSU. What's impressive to me is they have so many walks. Like their guys are really walking. A lot of them are walking more than they strike out by like a substantial margin. Derek Curiel, the freshman, obviously was supposed to be a stud. He's just been everything is advertised. Really been a table setter. Not hitting for a whole lot of power, but he's a table setter, spark plug. He's getting on base. He's walking. He's hitting over 400. Like the guy's a stud. Kent State will beat Pitt today, and Northeastern will beat Boston College. FAU was horrible last night against the breaking ball. Yeah, and again, like the thing is this, like I think there's like hitting development across the board has been geared so much towards just maximizing bat speed. And obviously I'm speaking generally because like the teams that like Tennessee, Georgia Tech, LSU, these teams that are really hitting, like they're training guys to have barrel accuracy. They're training guys to have good approaches. They're training guys to hit with 2 strikes. And what you see I told you guys, like my whole career in professional baseball, I never heard a hitting coach say like, "Hey guys, like we're going to try to put the ball in play. Like we're not striking out." I never heard that once. And again, everything is geared toward, well, let's hit the ball at the ballpark. We don't care if you strike out, just hit the ball at the ballpark. So, of course, you're going to see offensive numbers as far as batting average and stuff. And again, I talk with people and they're like, well, batting average doesn't really matter. And I'm like, if you actually think that, there's nothing I can say to convince you because you probably never played and you just believe all the analytics guys say, which again, like analytics is great, but it's definitely gone with a lot of organizations. It's gone way too far. Will James Madison and West Virginia be a decent matchup? I think West Virginia is going to be heavily favored there. I don't think it's like a blowout or anything. I just think West Virginia probably handles that pretty well. How much do they really care about the midweek games when you have ACC, SEC conference on the weekend? You care, man. You care because like those midweek losses kill you in RPI. Like those midweek losses, again, if it's a midweek against a really good mid-major, it's not going to kill you. But it's still like when you're talking about being one of the top 16 teams to get a hosting spot, dude, those midweek games sometimes are what break you. Like if you do, like, let's say you're 17-13 in the ACC, which is like you're in the hosting consideration, but you went like 500 in your midweek games, you're probably not getting a host. Right? So like they are very important. They're not important. They're kind of that icing on the cake for like a hosting spot or getting into the tournament if you're like at 14-16 in the ACC or 15-15. They're the extra icing on the cake. And I do think the ACC, with the addition of Stanford and Cal, with what Stanford's done so far, I do think like if you're 14-16 in the ACC, you're probably in, right? Because last year we saw LSU and Florida again at 13-17. Wonder how much these teams actually practice against breaking balls. Is it just about bat speed and hitting against velocity? You know, the best programs, I mean, they're using machines that are set to breaking balls. Like when I was at Georgia Tech, we did that quite a bit. I mean, we'd have one cage that was on velo. We'd have a cage on a breaking ball or whatever. And Georgia Tech actually has a machine called the iPitch. And you can, if you have the metrics for the opposing pitcher and release point and spin rate and the spin axis and everything, you can put all that in. And so you're facing, again, it's never going to be 100% like correct, but you're basically facing the exact same stuff you are going to be facing on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday. So you set that up like a couple days before the game, and you guys get to see something close to what they're going to see in the actual game. WH, would you start an ace on a midweek game? No, that would never make sense, because your conference games are like that's the meat of your resume for the tournament. So like those are the most important games. But the midweek game, just because the conference games are the most important, doesn't mean the midweek is not much less important, right? It's definitely the fourth most important game of the season. But again, those things still really impact you, and that's why last season, and we're seeing this more and more, if a team feels like they've solidified their resume for like a hosting spot, or they feel like they're in the tournament, a lot of teams canceled their final midweek game of the season last year because they didn't want to take a loss and get hit like a big RPI hit, and then all of a sudden they don't get a host. I heard those midweek games are when coaches try and find pitchers or position players who might replace a starter. I heard they are usually slugfest as well. It's not really that's not really true, Tim. Like midweeks, you're playing must win. Now, if you get out to a 13-0 lead and you're in the fifth inning, you're going to bring in backups. And so then you may see something in some of those guys, or you're going to throw guys that have kind of not gotten a lot of innings to see if maybe, oh, you know what, this guy looked pretty good. Maybe we'll play him throw him on the weekend. But you're not starting someone who's not typically starting, right? You're playing the exact same lineup pretty much, unless there's like a platoon difference or something, or you're maybe giving your catcher a DH spot, so that changes the lineup a little bit so that he can kind of get off his legs until the weekend. So there is slight differences, but you're not making a massive change in your lineup, or the guys you throw. I mean, you're gonna have a midweek starter, and then you may throw a couple of your really good bullpen arms for one inning as kind of like a middle of the week bullpen, right? It's no different than just throwing an intense bullpen session for like 20, 25 pitches. But overall, your strategy is not going to be much different. We jumped up 28 spots in RPI by beating FAU last night. Yeah, that was like I said, man, that was a big win. Like, if that game goes south for you guys, all of a sudden you're scared to death about the weekend, because you're like, dude, we could get swept, and now we've lost 8 straight. So I wanted to talk a little bit, guys, about like recruiting, because I see so many videos and tweets and stuff from people who really just have no idea what they're talking about. And they're telling kids, like, if you're not 200 pounds and you're not this and you're not that, you might as well not even play. And I'm like, dude, I was 153 pounds, 5'9" and 3/4. Not a lot of power, not a good arm. All I could do, I could really run, I could defend, and I had really good bat to ball skills. But like, basically what these guys are saying is like, well, you're never going to get a shot. It's like, dude, like, no one's getting recruited because they're 200 pounds. You're getting recruited because you're a really good player and you're physical. Like, it's not like, oh, hey, that guy's 200 pounds. Let's start recruiting him. Right. So my whole thing is, number one overall, what a coach is looking for is a ball player. Can this guy actually play the game? Because you may have a really good metrics, but we've all seen those guys that are showcase ponies, and they get in the game and they're lost. They don't know what to do. They're not very athletic. So like, number one, you got to be a really good baseball player. A lot of schools have that iPitch now. I know Kent does. Yeah, there's a lot of schools, but I mean, it's like you have your iPad and you just dial in all the metrics for each pitch, and then you can literally push like regular at bat, and it'll mix it up. It'll treat it like a real at bat. So like, I mean, that's as a training tool, that's invaluable, because now you actually are simulating an actual at bat. The only thing that's missing is the actual like timing mechanism of an actual pitcher. So that makes it a little bit tough. I mean, I think it has like a green light when the ball is falling. So like, all right, I got to get ready. Do you think Wake will win the series over Clemson? I feel like Wake lost a lot of pieces. I will say this. I'm going to go Wake over Clemson, because Clemson, to me, the offense is a little bit like They're playing a lot of close games. I think Clemson wins maybe Friday with Aiden Canuck because he's just one of the best pitchers in the country. But to me, the one concern I have with Clemson is they're not scoring a whole lot of runs. And Wake, to me, offensively is way better. And then their pitching staff's been lights out. So I think they match up very closely pitching wise, but I think Wake has a better offense. Clemson's got home field advantage though, so that's a factor. But I think just based on how they've played so far, I think Wake wins 2 out of 3. Now you guys are chatting me up so much. I gotta find. All right, what do coaches look for in catchers in terms of hitting? Asks Jose Andres Ruiz. Thanks for the question, Jose. Again, catching is one of those positions. It's a defensively premium position, so you have to be good enough defensively, number one, or you're not getting recruited unless you're being recruited because they think they really love the bat. They just don't know if you're going to be a good enough catcher, and they'll put you in a corner outfield spot or whatever. They're looking for the best possible hitter that can actually play really good defense. So it's tough to say, there's not really one thing or another, right? But they're looking for a guy who can compete in the box, controls the strike zone, has a good approach, doesn't have to be toolsed out of his mind offensively. But if you can hit for a high average and you're really good defensively, look at Von Lackey at Georgia Tech. I mean, he's hitting for a high average. He's not hitting for a lot of power, but he's elite defender, hitting for a high average, getting on base. They're just looking for a decent bat, really, like a guy they think can be a good bat. Now, if they can get better than that, they'll try. But how is Xavier number 2 in RPI with an 8-13 record? Shows how flimsy RPI is. Yeah, and our RPI's got issues, man. Right? That's why they take it. They take they take other metrics into account, like strength of schedule and all that stuff. Because RPI does have. I don't know how they're number 2 though. I can't really explain that. Weight training can sometimes be more important than ground balls or tee work, depending on where you're at in your development. The weight room, but why can't you do both? You know what I mean? You don't have time to work out for an hour and then get ground balls and hit off the tee or hit BP. That's the, and I know you're not saying that, Manny, but that's what what we run into a lot as advisors is guys are well, I had homework I had to do and this, and it's dude, do you want your dream or not? Because the person who really pushes themselves and works towards their dream and is dedicated to it, they find a way to make it work. So if I hear a guy make an excuse like that, I'll just tell him straight up. I'm I don't think you're taking this seriously enough. You think this is just going to happen. It's not going to it's not just going to happen. Where's Canes at? Crazy. I know. I don't know where Canes is. He's in hibernation, I guess. Cage Monster has seen a lot of those over the years. Yeah, it's and the thing I hate about now with all these cages is they all have TrackMan in them. And so these kids, they take one swing and then they want to look at it. And again, think about that. They're not focused on feeling something. And to be honest, I didn't need a TrackMan to tell me that I squared it up, backspun it, crushed it. Right? So these guys are in there and they're swinging and they're almost immediately turning to look at the TrackMan for information. Deaver, do they still recruit players that are built the way you claim you were built? Yes. Yeah. But again, I was listen, this is what set me apart. If I was a speed guy, 153 pounds, 5'9", 3/4, that was my weight. My first weigh-in at Georgia Tech was 153 pounds. The reason I had offers from Tennessee, Auburn, Georgia Tech is because I played the speed game. I hit line drives, really good approach at the plate, took my walks, stole bases, bunted for base hits all the time, and I played very elite level defense in center field. So if you're my size, you have to be a really good baseball player. Right? You gotta play the game. You gotta be the guy when a coach comes to watch you 3 or 4 times, every time they walk away and they're dude, that guy's a ball player. Canes just dropped in chat RPI ranking. Kyle, we actually threw out a base runner last night. Things may be turning for us. Yeah, that's going to be an issue when you face Georgia Tech, man. They're running wild. And it's, what's crazy is like when I was coaching there, I was screaming from the rooftops, like, these catchers are not good. A lot of these pitchers are slow to play. Like, we have to take advantage. Like, we have to steal bases more. And I remember even saying like that's something we have to emphasize in the fall. Like, we have to just let them run, be aggressive, get used to things. We got to let them take their lead. You time them from their lead to second base, what it takes on a stolen base. And then you have that data. And so generally speaking, what his time is on a stolen base. And then you see the pitcher, you know what the catcher's pop time is generally. And you say, okay, it's worth the risk, right? Like, we're pretty sure he's going to be safe here. And then you allow them, you train them, you teach them how to get jumps, everything like that. How's South Carolina better to go power 4 and ride the bench, or mid-major and potentially start? Mid-major and potentially start, man. Not even close. Like, riding the bench just means you're going to get told you got to leave and go in the portal. How is South Carolina not ranked? I think they just have to show. I think they're like a weekend away, right? They're like a weekend away. They're on the fringe, kind of like Georgia Tech and Kentucky and a few others. From being put in. And it's also about, like, especially like the D1 rankings, people have to drop out too, right? So if like no one in that bottom, like the bottom 5 or bottom 7 lose a series, they're not moving. Funny you say that. My middle son is the same way you were. When I'd say great hit, he would tell me he just missed it. He knows exactly where the ball hit the bat. Yeah. Right. Feel for the barrel. Did you coach Justin Henry Malloy at Georgia Tech? Yes. Yeah, I coached him. One of my favorite players I ever coached, because he had the drive to be elite. Every day, when I tell you this, every day at about 1:30, he would get to the field, practices at starts at like 3:30, and he'd say, hey Renner, he'd come in the coach's office or coach's clubhouse, or coach's little locker room, and he'd say, hey Renner, can you hit me some ground balls? And he just, like, I'd hit him like 100 ground balls before every practice. And what, he was coachable, man. When he was curious, he wanted to know what you thought. He asked questions like, "Hey, what do you think I'm doing here? Does that look good?" And like, he was coachable, man. Like, he didn't get defensive when we said, "Hey," he took responsibility when he made mistakes. Like, he was just like a great kid to coach. And I was so happy to see him just have massive success early. And get to the big league so fast, right? Because that was a guy who didn't even play at Vanderbilt. Like, he came to us as like not really had done anything, and all of a sudden became a star. Coach Vitello takes the most accountability I've seen in a coach when they lose. He consistently says a lot of it was his decision, and even when he doesn't need to take fault. Yeah, dude, like I said, man, like, there's a reason why the players at Tennessee love him. They don't like him. And they do like him. They do respect him, but they literally love him. You ask any player that's come out of that program, and again, every coach is going to have certain players like, he wasn't this or what that, because they didn't play, right? But like, there's a lot of programs where guys who started every year are like, I don't really like him. Tony Vitello, they all love him. They love him. And part of it is that, like, he's willing to shoulder the blame when things go wrong. He's willing to shoulder the blame in a loss. Like, he's not going to blame a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old kid. That's just who he is. And that's why everybody loves him and everyone respects him, to be honest. There's still a lot of respect for speed amongst scouts. Speed is a talent that makes up for a lot of other things and can be worked with. Well, and especially now that you can only pick off twice in a row, right? You can only pick off, or not twice in a row, but you can only pick off twice. So now, like, speed game is way easier to execute in professional baseball now. Again, I think I was highly undervalued because I was a line drive hitter and I hit ground balls, and I think it wasn't taken into account, like, the impact I had on defenses with the ability to base hit bunt, right? Like, ground balls were going to be more often hits for me because infielders had to play closer in, third baseman and first baseman had to play, 10 feet in on the grass. But again, if you're an analytics nerd, you don't know how the game actually works. You just know what the math says. you don't know how the game is impacted and the defense is impacted by a certain player. And so that's why I was highly undervalued because of that. Pitching development is challenging. Hitters can spend 2 hours a day, 7 days a week in cage. Pitchers have to maximize limited throwing per week. Yeah, it's true. We have a kid on our team that has elite speed, and he turns heads. Yeah, and speed really plays. Like, don't get me wrong, it still really plays the professional level, but like at the high school and college level, elite speed is so valuable because the defenses aren't as good. Like, you're going to beat out a lot of ground balls. We have a kid in our team that has elite speed. He turns heads. Yeah, Zach, I actually coached Brant Herter, too, for you guys. So 2 Georgia Tech boys representing on the Tigers. Not like hitting 500 balls at the range 5 days a week. But there's real diminishing returns after 100 or so swings in a session. You can't hit unlimited. Yeah, that's right, Buck. Like, eventually, like, your bat speed starts trailing off after like 25 swings. So you just got to be careful. Like, if you're swinging 100, if you're making 100 swings every day, like, you're going to fatigue out pretty quick. You guys are chatting so fast, I can't catch up. How many ground balls should an infielder take a day, or what should a catcher focus on the most? Dude, 100 ground balls, man. Take 10 or 15 to get loose, or, maybe 60, but 60 to 100, like, depending on how much energy you have and how fatigued you are. But again, I watch guys all the time in college, the guys that really work, like, they get maybe 60 or 70 pregame, or pre-practice, and then they get some in practice. And so it's a lot, right? If you want to be really good, it's reps, man. I'm expecting a big year for J-Hen on the Tigers. Yeah, I hope so too, man. I hope he's got a great year. I hope Brant has a great year. A lot of the guys I coached are getting close. Not just those two, but a lot of other guys are getting really close to breaking out. The program my son is a part of is big on do a little, a lot, meaning do some work every day, mix it up, make sure those are good, max reps. He did all winter and has made big strides, or a big difference. Yeah, like that, and that's the key, Buck. Like, it's got to be max effort, right? When you're doing ground balls, challenge yourself like it's the fastest dude on the planet running to first base, and you got to get rid of it with a lot of arm strength as fast as possible, and you're going to improve instantly. And it's easier to get him off the couch saying, let's just throw or lift for 30 minutes. Yeah. I notice it's easier to force errors because of my speed. I could hit a routine ball to short, but they rush the throw and sail it. Yeah. Yeah. And you, like I said, it's speed plays way up in high school and college, because even the best infielders in college, the vast majority of them will never play shortstop in the professional level. They're going to get moved to second or third base. So, like, your speed game, I just remember if I hit a ground ball in the 6th hole in college and the guy had to backhand it, I was safe. I was safe every time. In pro ball, you got a Venezuelan over there or Dominican over there, and you're out. That's one of the big differences. UTSA looked just as physical, if not more, than Texas. Yeah, I was impressed with their arms at the end of the game, man. They had some serious arms coming in, throwing mid-90s. UTSA is going to be really good. They looked really good. And I was impressed with Texas arms, man. It's not like they played bad. That one error in the 7th inning by the third baseman cost them the game, right? What is considered a good 60 time nowadays? I click on Perfect Game and see guys that when I watch them on film don't look that fast, and they're clocking 6.3. Yeah, some of these 60 times, man, are really heavily skewed because these guys are wearing like track spikes. They're in like shorts. They're on turf. They're not on grass, so you're going to be slower on grass. And so you compound like 3 or 4 of those factors, and it's like you ran 2 or 3 tenths of a second faster than you really are. A good 60 time, like a solid 60 time, is like 6.7 to 6.8. Like, that means like this guy can move. He's athletic. Now elite is, and really like what you really are looking for with a center fielder, which is like the one position where like 60 times really important, is like you really want like 6'6" or lower. Like 6'5" was a lot of times what a lot of schools were looking for. But yeah, you're right, Deaver, that it looks like there's dudes running like 6'1s and like 5'9s, and it's like I saw one perfect game showcase where they gave him a 10-yard head start. The laser didn't start for 10 yards, so they were running 70 yards, and the back 60 was being recorded. And then I looked at the times, and I'm like, oh well, yeah, now I know why some of these times are crazy. Because you got the first 10 yards the slowest portion of the 60. So you take that out, all their 60 times are going to be way faster than they should be. But like in Deaver, it depends on position too, right? If you're a corner outfielder, as long as you're like around a 7 or lower, that's fine. If you can really mash and you run like a 7-2, they're not going to care. First baseman, like again, you don't want someone who's like an 8, but if you're like a first baseman and you're 7'4", 7'5", like they're not, and you mash, they're not going to really care. And even shortstop, like I've heard people say, well, he doesn't run well enough for short. And I'm like, why does a 60 time matter for a shortstop? He's not running more than like 20 feet, right? Shortstop's all about first step quickness, like agility, side to side speed, like everything like that. So really the only positions that matter for a 60 defensively are your outfielders. And then the 60 time, again, it's like second to home. So okay, this guy's an elite runner. He's going to score on a lot of singles from second, stuff like that. UTSA coach should be getting a Power 4 job soon. Yeah, I mean, you'd think so, right? It's tough, man. Like it's tough in the coaching world just to get that first opportunity at a big time school. You just got to keep winning and let your performance dictate what happens. WH, I was not expecting this Texas A&M 25 downfall. Yeah, and like I'll say this, WH and these guys who have been in my channel now consistently for like a year, like they heard me say when that hiring was made, it was a very surprising hire. And the issue is you had a guy who was basically, if you think about it, he was like the fourth coach on the team, because you had Nolan Kane, who was the recruiting coordinator, I believe, associate head coach. And then you had Max Weiner, who was the pitching coach. So those two guys are the two big assistants. And then Michael Early was kind of the fourth guy, but he was technically the hitting coach. So you hired like the third assistant as a head coach, which again, like that doesn't, he could end up being a really head coach, but just right now, the only difference in the team that you can speak of is the coaching staff. So, I mean, the question I posed is, what's more likely to happen? That hiring an assistant coach that has no proven track record as a head coach turns out bad, or like, what would you prefer? Hire this, and it was pretty obvious it was done to bring back all the hitters that went in the portal. But I remember saying, like, I don't know if this is worth it. Like, you're making a decision to play for 1 year instead of thinking of the future of the program. And again, it could turn out totally fine, but it's just not looking good right now. And especially when you were the hitting coach and your offense is supposed to be the best offense in the country coming into the season, and they're anemic. Like they're like the worst offense in the SEC, or one of the worst offenses in the SEC right now. Through college pregame, I would take 15 to 20 swings. Never been a fan of taking too many pregame. I know everyone is different. No, what you find in pro ball, especially when you get up the ladder, you realize that what you're doing in BP is you're searching for a feel. And once you get that feel, I tell all my hitters, get out of the cage. You got your swing locked. What most hitters do is they get that feel and they hit a 3 or 4 line drives and they feel great. And then they're like, I just want one more. And then they roll over one, or they get jammed on one, and they're like, well, I just want one more. And I'm like, dude, when you get the feeling, there were sometimes I was going so good in pregame, I would go hit BP, like I would hit before BP. I would get like some front toss in and a little bit over the top. And if I felt great in that session, I'm not hitting BP on the field. But I also was good at, if I had a bad BP, I always was like, well, I know I'm going to have a good game now because I saved all my hits for the game. Right. So I was able to kind of psychologically trick myself. If my BP went wrong, I'd be like, oh, I saved all my hits for the game today. Yep. Kyle waved the warning flags about A&M. And again, like it could turn out they could go on a run here and everyone would be like, oh, well, they're actually playing like they can now. But you just haven't seen any stretch of that yet. And the offense has only performed against like really subpar competition. Deaver, I was asking because I was wondering how important it is playing fast. There's some guys who run 6'8", but there's still a lot of bags because they're aggressive and play fast. Yeah. Like 60 time is a metric, but just like any other metric, how it plays in the game is the most important thing. So you see guys who are really fast, but it doesn't seem like they play fast, like you're saying, Deaver. 60 time is not as important for stolen bases, even though, again, it correlates well. But the stolen base is all about that first step in the jump. So you can be a 6'8", 6'9" runner, but you got a great first step, great jump. Like you're going to be very successful stealing bases because it's more about that. Again, you're stealing a bag. It's not even 30 yards away. So it's less than half of a 60 time because you have like a 12-foot lead. Thoughts on putting your best and stronger hitter first, like Ohtani? I've done this for our travel team, and it's worked out so far, especially late in games. I like having the best hitter hitting second because, again, you want that guy to have the opportunity to hit with the runner on base. That's the only thing against your best hitter hitting first is they're coming up a lot of times with nobody on, and they're coming up after the bottom of the order. So you typically your worst hitters. So they may come up with no one on a lot, and you want that guy having the ability to hit with runners in scoring position. So it depends on your lineup. Like if your lineup's not good, you might want to put him first so he gets the most at bats. But kind of the general rule of thumb, what people are doing now is they're hitting him. Like Drew Burris, for example, hits second for Georgia Tech because they have a good leadoff hitter, and you want him to at least hit with one guy on base. What is the standard for how hard a catcher should throw? The standard, I mean, really, you want to be around 80 with your catcher velo. Like I've seen guys who are like 78, but they got really good release. They get rid of it quickly and they have really good pop times. Obviously, the harder your arm, the better your arm strength, the more room for error there is in your release. Like Jorge Alfaro, who's still in the big leagues. I remember playing against him, and he had the best arm for a catcher I'd ever seen. He threw it so hard. It was like you literally thought, if I steal here and he hits me in the head on a throw, I might die. But he didn't have a very quick release, so he wasn't as elite as people would think because his arm strength was so good. He didn't have to have like an elite release. Will Ethan Holiday or Jace for Texas A&M go number 1 in the draft? No, Lavalette's not going to go 1 in the draft. He's struggling, man. And that was one of when I saw him projected to go 1-1, because when I watch him in the outfield, I don't think he sticks in center field. So that hurts his draft stock. And then I don't think he's a good enough hitter to go 1-1. Right? He hit 307 last year in this era. Like that's okay. But that's not, again, he hit 29 home runs, so you like the power. And with how the game is played at the big league level now, like you don't care if he hits 240, if he hits a lot of home runs. That's just how every offense is run now. But I don't think when you're drafting him, you don't think you're getting a guy who's going to hit around 300 as a big leaguer. You're drafting a guy he's got a good approach. Like he takes his walks, but he swings and misses a good amount. He's just not a consistent enough hitter for me to go 1-1. Could Ethan Holiday go 1-1? Yeah. In my opinion, it is difficult to train slugging in a cage. It happens hitting in a real park, lots of reps. You got to see your ball flight in a real park. That's kind of true, Cap. But again, in a cage, you still should be able to, like as a hitter, you should know I backspun that one, or I top spun that one. Like you should still be able to tell your ball flight. It's probably between Arnold and Holiday. Yeah, I agree. I think Lavalette is definitely falling pretty far on draft boards. I think he still probably goes in the first. I mean, it depends on how he finishes, right? Because right now, the way he's hitting, it would be very hard to justify picking him in the first round. Even though you may, what would happen is a team would buy high on the stock, or they're buying low on the stock and thinking we're getting this guy for a great price because he was projected a 1-1 pick. So you probably still see him go late in the first round if his performance doesn't get much better. But you don't know with some of these GMs now, man. Like they do crazy stuff. But I would be very like red. There's a bunch of red flags waving right now for him. Skeens threw a ball literally right down the middle of Holiday, and it was called a ball. Yeah, there's no Paul Skeens in this draft. Like Paul Skeens, like Jamie Arnold, again, like Paul Skeens was throwing 102. Unbelievable command of all of his pitches. All of his pitches are plus or 60 grade or higher, right? So, like Paul Skeens is like a once every decade maybe type player, or once every 2 decades type player. And obviously the Pirates made the right decision. You just hope they can build around him and don't waste his prime, his years with them by not fielding a solid team on the field. How do you think Vance Honeycutt can fix his strikeout problem? I mean, listen, it's not going to get fixed in professional baseball right now because in professional baseball, they don't care about strikeouts. Like that's the issue. You can make there's a lot of adjustments you can make. You can choke up on the bat with 2 strikes, give yourself more bat control. You can try to cut down on your swing a little bit, be more direct. Like there's a bunch of different ways you can do it, but I just don't think it's going to happen in professional baseball because most of these organizations, like they don't care about strikeouts. And even if they, like, don't get me wrong, deep down inside they do, but no one's saying that. Did you ever coach against Kerry Carpenter? I don't. Where did he play at, Zach? LSU finally being tested this weekend. Yeah, it's going to be that's going to be a fun series. Graham, what do you think about me playing second base? Would it be smart to switch to shortstop for recruiting purposes? First off, just be the best second baseman you can be, right? An elite second baseman is very valuable. A guy who can really turn double plays. A guy who every time on a double play ball, he's turning it, he's getting the out. But playing shortstop will definitely help you in recruiting. So if you can play shortstop and you can work at it and get really good at recruiting, it boosts you big time. I don't think I coached against him, Zach. I don't think I did. Deaver, talk about speed. Have you seen the young man Chandler Simpson for Tampa? Yeah, Georgia Tech guy, man. Georgia Tech guy. Let me see here. And he's a guy that, again, like, he can't hit, like, he has to hit differently. He's got to hit ground balls. He's got to hit low line drives, and he's done a great job doing that. Let me see if I can find his numbers. He was a guy at Georgia Tech. Like he literally, I told James Ramsey this. I was like, you guys have perfected his his average launch angle because he hit so many balls that went just over the infielder's glove and landed just in front of the outfielders. Like it was insane how he did that. Like the question for him, and obviously he's done a great job so far in his pro career, is at the big league level, they're just going to challenge him because they don't want him on first base. So they're just going to throw him a bunch of fastballs and try to throw fastballs to the top of the zone. And can he lay off of those, but also hit those well enough for average? Because like teams are just going to challenge him in the big leagues. They're just going to go right at him and limit his on base percentage through walks. Who's a better hitter, Cruz or Tommy Tanks? I mean, I think they're different hitters. He hasn't done much in the minor leagues, man. Like his first season in, I mean, his first season in Stockton in A-ball, he hit 224 and hit 2 home runs in 107 at bats. So, I mean, I think you got to go with Cruz right now. Was thinking Rice would hire Kyle for their opening. Thanks for that, Manny. What do you think Kerry Carpenter went through the minors so quickly after being a later round pick? Man, some guys just get missed, right? Some guys just get missed, and it's weird. Some guys just get better in professional baseball, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes it's the strike zone's a little bit better, and they get better. They get in better counts because they do have good plate discipline. So it's hard to say. Why is the Friday night starter the ace in college, but in pro ball the ace usually pitches on Sunday? Well, because Friday night is your opening game against your conference opponent. So usually you want to throw your best arm because you're facing the other team's best arm. So your Friday night starter is your ace because those are your conference games. Those are your most important games. And your Friday night guy is usually your best starting pitcher. That's who you want because you can't sweep a team unless you win on Friday, right? So if you're going to give yourself the best chance to sweep, you're pitching your ace on Friday because you got to win game 1 to win all 3. So that's why. All right, guys, I gotta jump off now. We got an early game at the high school I help out with. So thanks for all the chat, everything like that.